The reading before the lesson this morning will come from 2 Corinthians chapter 11, verses 13 through 15. 2 Corinthians 11, 13 through 15. And I will be reading from the New King James. For such are false apostles, deceitful workers, transforming themselves into apostles of Christ. And no wonder, for Satan himself transforms himself into an angel of light. Therefore it is no great thing if his ministers also transform themselves into ministers of righteousness, whose end will be according to their works.
There are many different kinds of people in the world. You have some tall people. You have some short people. You have some wise people. You have some unwise people. You have kind people. You also have mean people, don't you? Now, expanding off of that, some individuals are very loud and outspoken, while others are very quiet and very reserved. Some are very forthright and blunt, while others are somewhat shy and subtle. Now, if you think about that, temptation is very similar to that, in that there are some things that are plain and obvious. This is a temptation. This is something enticing or encouraging you to sin, but other things are not quite so obvious, are they? Now, we must, in view of that, since there are some things that are plain, there are some things that are a little bit more subtle, we must have biblical knowledge. And in order for us to have biblical knowledge, we're going to have to open the Bible. We're going to have to study the Bible and see. Some things are plain. Idolatry, fornication. Some things are plain regarding temptation. But other things are a little bit more subtle. And oftentimes we convince ourselves that, yeah, this is wrong and I don't do that, but if I can get away with this, because this isn't really anything wrong, then things are all right. That's just not true. The subtleties of temptation are found in glamorized garbage. Do you understand that? It's garbage, but it's dressed up, so to speak, with makeup and perfume, and you don't really see it for what it really is. Now imagine if something has a skull and crossbones on it and says, this is poison. If you drink this, you will die. How many people do you know say, oh, well, let's just drink it and find out? Most of us don't do that. And I think, by and large, we're sort of that way with sin. There are some things that in our minds have skull and crossbones on it and say, if you drink this, you're going to die. If you go do this, this is sin and you're going to die. But there are other things that are just as dangerous, but they don't have a warning label on them. They don't have a skull and crossbones on them, and we get a little confused by those subtleties. So let's try to talk today about the subtleties of temptation. 3 things we're going to suggest today, and here's the first one. Temptation subtlety number 1 is deception. Point and then 2 subpoints will be the way we do this sermon. So temptation subtlety number 1 is deception. Deception can be involved with temptation, and deception blinds us to the facts. More often than not, we see and hear exactly what we want to see and hear. You know what that means? It means basically this. We will accept the things that make us feel comfortable, and we will reject the things that make us feel uncomfortable. Let me give an illustration. Idolatry is sinful. I think we all see the skull and the crossbones warning this is poison on idolatry. Galatians 5, 19 through 21. I think we can see that covetousness is sinful. Do you understand? And we'll talk about it more in just a second. Covetousness is sinful. Jesus teaches that in Mark 7, 21 through 23. We understand the concept of covetousness has a skull and crossbones on it. It says, warning, if you drink this, you're going to die. But here's the subtle deception. What is idolatry really? what is covetousness really? Now, we'll talk about the concept of idolatry and say, oh, that's sinful. You can't commit idolatry and go to heaven. Oh, covetousness is sinful. You can't commit covetousness and go to heaven. But you know where we're subtly deceived? We don't really know what idolatry is, and we really don't know what covetousness is, because surely we've never committed idolatry, have we? Surely we've never committed covetousness, have we? Well, look quickly at our scripture reading in 2 Corinthians 11. Here's the point. There are some things that we can see. We know they're wrong. They look wrong. We've been taught they're wrong. But the problem is sometimes it's the same horrible thing. It's dressed up a little differently and we don't see it. We don't see it. 2 Corinthians 11 beginning in verse 13. Considering people, for such are false apostles. What did they present themselves to be? They presented themselves in so to speak, with fixed hair and makeup, and they smelled nice, and they used good words, but what were they underneath all that? They were false. They weren't what they were presenting themselves to be. For such are false apostles, deceitful workers, transforming themselves into the apostles of Christ. Get this picture in your mind. Garbage. A hot, stinking, nasty pile of garbage, but yet perfume and other things thrown over the top of it so that you can't tell right off the bat that it's garbage. Now, you may look at it and say, and smell it and everything else and say, oh, this is okay, this looks good. But what is it? What is it underneath all the makeup, underneath all the glamour? What is it? It's garbage. It's garbage. What were these people? No matter what they looked like, no matter what they sounded like, what were they at their core? They were false. They were not right. Verse number 14, and no marvel, don't be surprised. For Satan himself is transformed into an angel of light. Hadn't it always struck you as funny that, when you get a mental picture of the devil, even from a child, he's a little red horn-tailed thing with a pitchfork? That's probably the farthest thing away from what the devil would actually look like, what Satan would actually look like. When you get descriptions of him, it's like this. Even when he did appear, he could look like an angel of light. That's what perhaps he looked like. He looked like something holy, but what was he at the core? He's rotten. He's the deceiver, trying to deceive us. Verse 15, therefore it is no great thing if his ministers also, his servants, also be transformed as the ministers of righteousness. Consider false teachers. Do they come out and say, I'm a false teacher? They're going to say, hey, this is poison. If you obey this doctrine, you're going to go to hell. No, that's not generally how it works, is it? What do? They take that false doctrine and they doll it up. And they make it look like something that's so harmless and so innocent. But what is it at its core? It's rotten and it's wrong. Whose end shall be according to their works. Now, I think we can see that. But let's don't forget the illustration we gave with idolatry and covetousness. Turn to Colossians chapter 3. Are you aware of this verse in the New Testament? Colossians 3 and verse 5. You say, I've never committed idolatry in my life. Oh, is that right? Is that a fact? Are you aware that if you've committed the sin of covetousness, you've committed idolatry? No. Yes. See, we see that idolatry is wrong. We understand that. But what is idolatry? What does it take to actually make something idolatry? Look at what the Bible says in Colossians 3:5. Mortify, put to death, therefore, your members which are upon the earth. Primarily, what's going to be listed are sexual sins. And generally, we can see these too, can't we? Fornication, uncleanness, inordinate affection, evil concupiscence. But it doesn't stop there, does it? And covetousness. And what does it say? Which is idolatry. Wow. That's pretty heavy. That means if I've committed the sin of covetousness, I'm guilty of the sin of idolatry, says who? Says the inspired Apostle Paul. I may never go bow down at an altar of Baal and offer incense or whatever it may be to the false god Baal, but if I commit covetousness, what have I done? What have I done? Now we can see idolatry, but we're deceived about covetousness. That is a great temptation, and it is a subtle temptation as a 21st century American citizen, isn't it? The American dream is to what? Get everything you want. Go fulfill your wildest dreams. Go work hard so you can make a bunch of money and you can have a bunch of stuff. Somewhere, if we're not careful, covetousness will overtake us. Be careful, brethren, despite the deception. Placing riches before God is covetousness. And covetousness is idolatry. Matthew 6, 19 through 21. Lay not up for yourselves treasures upon earth, where moth and rust doth corrupt, and where thieves break through and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust doth corrupt, and where thieves do not break through nor steal. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. But once blinded to the facts, we can be tempted to blame others for our failures. One of the hallmarks of 21st century American society is the so-called blame game. You know what that is? Something bad happened to me and it's your fault. It's not my fault. It's your fault. It's the blame game. Don't we do that as 21st century Americans? I hear it, and I'm sure you do too. Nobody wants to take personal responsibility for anything. It's always everybody else's fault. Why is your life the way it is? It's not my fault. It's everybody else's fault. Let me illustrate it. Why didn't you go pro in sports? Well, the coach wouldn't play me enough. If he'd have put me in the way he should have, I would have went pro. Well, and the truth is you were out smoking when you should have been out running. Right? You lied and said you were going to the weight room and went and did something else totally. I know how that goes. Let me give you another one. Why aren't you a supervisor yet? Well, the boss man has it out for me. Oh, is that the case? It's not because you call out drunk every other weekend, because you're sick all of a sudden. Well, why are you sick? You've been out living it up. No wonder you're not a supervisor. It's always somebody else's fault, isn't it? It's never our fault. We can never accept personal responsibility. And we're being conditioned to believe that in our society. The fact is, friend, we have no one to blame for our failures but ourselves, especially when it comes to sin. James 1, 13 through 15 is still in the Bible, isn't it? Let no man say when he is tempted, I am tempted of God. For God cannot be tempted with evil, neither tempteth he any man. But every man is tempted when he is drawn away of his own lust and enticed. Then when lust hath conceived, it bringeth forth sin. And sin, when it is finished, bringeth forth death. I want you to turn with me to the book of Romans. Let's look at Romans 6, verses 16 through 18. Who do we have to blame for our own failures? No one. It's a deception. The blame game is the same thing as not admitting what we truly are or what we truly have done. It's passing the buck. Romans 6, beginning in verse 16. Know ye not, don't you know this, that to whom ye yield yourselves, nobody forces us, we yield ourselves. Servants to obey, his servants ye are to whom you obey. Don't you see that? Whoever we obey is who we serve. Now look how it gets a little scary. Whether of sin unto death or of obedience unto righteousness. Don't we see that? We're serving somebody. And if we're serving sin, we're going to die spiritually. Or if we're not serving sin, then we're serving righteousness. But God be thanked that ye were, past tense, the servants of sin, but ye have obeyed from the heart that form of doctrine which was delivered you, that pattern of teaching. That's the new covenant. Being then when? When you obeyed from the heart that pattern of doctrine or teaching, being then made free from sin, ye became the servants of righteousness. The subtlety of temptation, number one that we're discussing, is deception. Beware, brethren. Now, number two. Temptation subtlety number two is discouragement. Discouragement can be involved with temptation, and discouragement, rather, blurs our true focus. Many times, discouragement is self-inflicted. What do you mean? Maybe you've heard it expressed this way, maybe you haven't. They're called the po-me's. Po me. Nobody loves me. Everybody hates me. I think I'll just go eat a worm. Right? That's the po-me's. It's discouragement. Listen, discouragement can be a subtle form of temptation because it blurs our true focus. So let me give us some questions that maybe we'll answer correctly or we won't. Number one, is life all about us and our wants and desires? If so, then we'll be riddled with the po-me's, won't we? I don't feel good, po-me. Life didn't go my way, po-me. Listen, that is a subtle form of temptation because many times discouragement is self-inflicted. Or is life all about God and what He wants and desires for us? It's really one of the two things. Is it all about us or is it all about God? Which is it? Well, of course we're going to give the canned answer, aren't we? Aren't we? Aren't we going to give the canned answer? Yes, everything is about God. But how do we act? Do our actions show and match up with our words? Many times, unfortunately, they do not. Think about Proverbs 6, 16 through 19. These 6 things, doth the Lord hate, yea, 7 are an abomination unto Him. A proud look, a lying tongue, and hands that shed innocent blood, and heart that deviseth wicked imaginations, feet that be swift in running to mischief, a false witness that speaketh lies, and he that soweth discord among brethren. How many of those things are self-inflicted? Think about it. How many of those things are self-inflicted? In some capacity, all 7 of them are self-inflicted. Now, our focus must remain steadfastly adhered to Christ, the gospel, and heaven. Turn back to Colossians 3. Look at the first 3 verses of Colossians 3. Is life all about me and my wants? Is life all about you and your wants? Or is life all about God and what He wants for our lives? Beware of the subtleties of temptation. Colossians 3, beginning verse 1. If ye then be risen with Christ. In order to be risen with Christ, you have to be buried with Him. Go back and read how that happens in Colossians 2:12. If ye then be risen with Christ, seek those things which are above, where Christ sitteth on the right hand of God. Set your affection on things where? Does it say below? Set your affection on things below? Is that what it says? No. It's not all about us. Set your affection on things above, where Christ sitteth on the right hand of God. Do you see that? Set your affection on things above, not on things on the earth. Not on things on the earth. For, here's the reason, ye are dead, and your life is hid with Christ in God. It's not all about us. Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, and if there be any praise, think on these things. Philippians 4:8, is that what we do? Or have we set our affection on things below? Not where Christ is, but where we are. Once our true focus is blurred, we can be tempted, now watch, to belittle our friends. I have a question. Why do we so often mistreat those who mean the most to us? Can you answer that for me? The only answer I can think of is we've convinced ourselves that they'll just take it. And they're not going to mistreat us in return. Why is it that we mistreat those who mean the most to us? Well, on top of everything else, it has to be, at least in part, because we have blurry spiritual vision. That's a Bible principle in Matthew 13 and verse 15. But perhaps it's also a result of selfishness. I can't say absolutely. God only knows for certain. The point is that no matter what happens or why it happens, we must resist the temptation to take out our discouragement or our frustration on others, especially on those who we consider to be our friends. Proverbs 18:24. A man that hath friends must show himself friendly. Doesn't that make sense? And there is a friend that sticketh closer than a brother. Look at Colossians 3, verses 12 to 14, since we're already there. In view of some things in verses 1 through 11 that we must put off, there also are some things we must put on. There are some things that have to go, but there are some things that have to stay. Put on, therefore, Colossians 3:12, as the elect of God, holy and beloved, bowels of mercies, kindness, humbleness of mind, meekness, long-suffering, forbearing, verse 13, one another, and forgiving one another, if any man have a quarrel against any. Even as Christ forgave you, so also do ye. And above all these things, perhaps even the way to express it would be the most important thing, or the glue that bonds all these other things together. Above all these things, put on charity, which is the bond of perfectness. Do we practice this when we're discouraged? Or do we just lash out at the people we love the most? Our spouses, our friends, perhaps even our parents, our children, whomever it may be. Friend, it has to go. Now, third, temptation subtlety number 3 is desperation. Desperation blindsides our families. You know, desperation, when you begin to think about it, almost always brings horrible results. In searching for what the world has convinced most of us to be true happiness, which it's not, but we believe that it is, some fall victim to taking desperate measures which usually have no scriptural basis and no scriptural backing. Here's something that, even introducing this thought, that I believe you'll understand is true. Cooler heads prevail. Isn't that the case? Before taking some type of a desperate act or an act of desperation, is it not true that, generally speaking, cooler heads prevail? Yes. Now, thinking before speaking is a biblical principle. Ecclesiastes 5:2. So how important is thinking things through with an open Bible and an open heart before making a serious life decision? You know what many times happens? We're desperate. We're frustrated. All these things are coming upon us, and then here's the subtlety of temptation. And it's called desperation. Desperation usually results from frustration. I'm frustrated with this. I'm frustrated with that. I'm frustrated here. I'm frustrated there. I don't know what to do. So many times we do the most desperate thing that we can think of. And what happens? Big, big, big trouble. My advice is to please consider all of what God has to say about the subject before giving in to desperation and blindsiding your family. 1 Corinthians 10:13 is still in the Bible, and it's still true. There hath no temptation taken you, but such as is common to man. We all struggle the same ways. It may not seem that way, but trust me, that's Bible. There hath no temptation taken you individually, but such as is common to man. But God is faithful, who will not suffer you to be tempted above or beyond that you're able, but will with the temptation also make a way to escape, that you may be able to bear it. Do you know many times how we can avoid temptation? Cooler heads prevail. Don't react. Think first. Think before doing something out of desperation. Acts 17:11 is another way. And many times, here's the answer. These were more noble than those in Thessalonica, in that they received the word with all readiness of mind and searched the Scriptures daily, whether those things were so. If you feel like you need to make a serious life decision in your family, please search the Scriptures daily before an act of desperation is made, and then you may not be able to go back and fix it. But desperation also breaks our freedom. Recall that God tests us, He tries us, He proves us, but He never tempts us. Never does God tempt us. Satan wants us to remain enslaved in sin, while God desires us to be free from the heavy chains of heartache and sorrow. Generally speaking, acts of desperation cause us to sink further and further into the miry clay of wrongdoing. That's a Bible principle also from Psalm 40 and verse number 2. It's time to break free from desperation and enjoy the freedom available in Christ. Turn with me to the book of Romans chapter 6. Look with me in Romans chapter 6, and let's begin in verse number 1. And let's see what we can determine that the Bible teaches right here. Romans 6, beginning in verse 1. The King James Version says, "What shall we say then? Shall we continue in sin that grace may abound?" I like how it's worded in verse 2. God forbid. May it never be so, that we convince ourselves to continue in sin so that grace may abound. That's not how it works. God forbid, how shall we that are dead to sin live any longer therein? Know ye not, don't you know this? That so many of us as were baptized into Jesus Christ, were baptized into his death. Therefore we are buried with him by baptism. Do you see it? Into death. Where did Christ shed his blood? In his death. That like as Christ was raised up from the dead by the glory of the Father, even so we also should walk in newness of life. For if we have been planted together in the likeness of his death, we shall be also in the likeness of his resurrection. That is the resurrection of life, never to die again. Knowing this, that our old man is crucified with him, that the body of sin might be destroyed, that henceforth we should not serve sin. For he that is dead, dead how? Dead to himself, dead to the ways of the world. He that is dead is freed from sin. Satan is trying to enslave us. The Lord is trying to set us free. Now it's up to us. Who are we going to choose to obey? Didn't we already read verses 16 through 18? Look at verse 22. But now being made free from sin. Can't be made free from sin until you've been baptized into Christ. And become servants to God, or to righteousness. I can't read. I'm telling you what, I'm going to have to get glasses. I cannot see. But now being made free from sin and become servants to God, ye have your fruit unto holiness, and the end everlasting life. It's sinful to laugh at the preacher when he can't read. I'm telling you, it's somewhere written in the Bible. The point is this. Romans 8, 1 and 2. There is therefore now no condemnation, but it's qualified, to them which are in Christ Jesus, who walk not after the flesh, but after the Spirit. For the law of the Spirit of life in Christ Jesus hath made me free, made us free, made whosoever obeys it, free from the law of sin and death. Resisting the subtleties of temptation requires an accurate understanding of the Bible. Here's simply what we need to understand. There are some temptations that are plain. There are other temptations that are subtle, that we may not see them right off the bat. So we have to search the Scriptures in order to understand what is what. But even when we have an accurate understanding of the Bible, there's still something else that has to be done. We have to implement it. I'm afraid there are a tremendous amount of people who understand what the Bible teaches, but they'll never do it. They'll never implement the understanding that they have. In order to get to heaven, we must be hearers and doers of the word. Have we done what God expects? You're going to get to hear it, but have you done it? Hear the truth. Acts 18:8. Believe the truth. Acts 16:31. Repent of sin. Acts 17:30. Confess Jesus Christ to be the Son of God. Acts 8:37. Be immersed in water for the remission of sins. Acts 2:38. And brethren, we have to be faithful unto death. Acts 14:22. Wherever you are, come now, as together we stand and as we sing the song of encouragement.